All right, good evening. My name is Tony Schenk, and I work with Gonzalez Companies. We are engineering consultants for the city of Brentwood, and tonight I'm here to talk to you about stormwater infill development permits. Tonight's presentation is going to be pretty brief. First, we're going to review what the stormwater infill development ordinance looks like, which was the mechanism to get the permit into place. We're going to discuss the permitting process. We're going to check out the MyGov site, which is where all the permits from the city originate and live, and all of the notifications come from. So we're going to take a look at that. And we're also going to look at what information is required to be submitted for the stormwater infill development permits, and show you some available resources so that this process isn't too cumbersome. The purpose of it isn't to make life in the city of Brentwood more difficult, but rather to make things safer and more convenient for all. So we're going to go ahead and go through this presentation here. All right, so starting with the ordinance that was passed to get this stormwater infill development permits established. It was bill number 6296.1. That bill was unanimously passed at the City Council on September 8th, 2020. This ordinance amended Section 500 of the city's Code of Ordinances and established the review process, the items required for the stormwater infill development. The purpose of the ordinance, again, is not to make things more difficult, but rather to establish those rules and regulations, standards, standards for stormwater management. The city has had issues with stormwater control. The city's infrastructure was built based on existing homes. Now that homes are being rebuilt, they're getting bigger. Additional impervious areas are being constructed, and what this stormwater infill development permits do is regulate how that additional impervious area is controlled. So when is a stormwater infill development permit required? The ordinance says that any new construction resulting in net impervious greater than or equal to 200 square feet will require stormwater infill development permit. So what's impervious area? Let's take a look here. Impervious area is the portion of the property that substantially reduces or prevents infiltration of stormwater into the ground. So in a typical setting, if you just had grass, the grass would allow the stormwater to infiltrate into the ground. However, a paved surface or roofs or sidewalks or swimming pools, driveways, patios, those types of things prevent that infiltration into the ground, and in the end result in additional stormwater runoff. And so that's what the city is trying to control with this permitting process. So we've got a list of items there. Like I had mentioned, those are impervious areas. But what we're really looking at here is the net impervious. So the net impervious is that existing impervious, so those houses and driveways and sidewalks that are already on the property, that's an existing impervious, but we're going to maybe remove that and build something newer, bigger, something that takes more space. So you have that existing impervious, and then you're going to be able to subtract that from the new impervious, and that's the net impervious. So if you're going to build a 1,200 square foot home, but you already have a 1,200 square foot home, your net impervious would be 0. If you're adding a 10 by 10 patio to the backside of your house, for instance, that would be the only new impervious, and your 1,200 square foot home wouldn't count for the impervious, and a 10 by 10 area is only 100 square feet, and so therefore it would not require a permit. So we're looking at the new impervious or net impervious. So what does the ordinance say about fees here? So the stormwater infill development permit fees are based upon the amount of net impervious area that you're adding. Uh, Over 200 square feet, you require a permit. And for those areas that are less than 500 square feet, you have a permit of $500. For any new net impervious areas that are greater than 500 square feet, the permit fees are $1,000. There is also an additional deposit, and this deposit is based upon a formula um, that goes hand in hand with the total impervious area. And what this deposit does is allows the city to maintain some control and enforcement once the permit is issued. We want to make sure that the best management practice, the stormwater controls that have been selected are actually implemented and done so correctly. So that stormwater deposit will help provide that enforcement. All right, so when is a stormwater development permit not required? Again, it's only those areas greater than 200 square feet of net impervious. Also, we won't require a development permit if the permitting is already going through MSD for a new development, or for those areas that are disturbing more than, or have developments greater than 1 acre. Again, those will be controlled by MSD, and the permitting will be through them and not through this stormwater infill development permit. Okay, so how does one go about getting a stormwater infill development permit? The permitting process is as follows. First, the contractor must be registered with the city. Most of the municipal contractors are aware of this, and I'll have a link here that we can kind of check out how, if you're not registered, how you can become registered with the city. But once you're registered with the city, and you would have an application for a new building, so a new building permit, which is through the MyGov system. Again, this is the system that the city uses to control all of the permits through the city. So permits are not supposed to be sent via email. All of the information should be uploaded to that MyGov system, and we'll take a look at that a little bit more in detail in just a second. But so initially, an application through a new building permit or a new addition or reconstruction would be done through the MyGov system. And then either a city employee or Gonzalez Companies, as the city's engineering consultant, would make a determination of whether or not your new construction or addition would require a stormwater infill development permit. So once we determine, yes, you do need a permit for stormwater, we will add notes to your building permits section and note that there's items required. And we will tell you that a stormwater infill development permit is required. And we will begin the process of having an additional application, an additional permit loaded into the MyGov system where we have to upload additional information about your stormwater BMP. And then at that point, you would be required to upload that information. And then Gonzalez, as the consulting engineer for the city of Brentwood, we review that information and ensure compliance with the city ordinance. So that's, in a nutshell, the permitting process. I'm going to quickly jump over to the site. And this is all through the city of Brentwood's website. There's links that get you to this location where you can request a registration. So this would, if you're not already registered with the city, this is the website that you go to again to get registered with the city, and you can decide what kind of contractor you are, and you're gonna enter your information, and you have a small application fee, and you will become registered with the city. So that's as simple as that. I'm going to go ahead and go back to my presentation here. And so once you're registered, you will be able to upload information to that MyGov site. And I'm just going to kind of go through what that will look like for you. So what I have done is this is the login location for the MyGov site. You will get a username and password, and you'll go ahead and get your username and password typed in. And then after you're registered, this is the site. This is what your the location of the information. I've set up a dummy project for presentation purposes here. Here we can see how many projects do I have. I've got that one project. I don't have any requested information. I don't have any payments due. I don't have any expiring projects, etc. Items in review. I do have one of those. I have an item in review because I've set up that fake project. And so this is where you can see all of your information, and then you can go ahead and click My Projects, and then you will get to see what's in here. All right, so I've got one project. This is a Stormwater Infill Development Permit project that I have set up, and I want to see what's in here. I've got 2 notes. I need to read what those notes are, and you will be able to get into here saying, you are required to either you revise documents, or I have requested engineering documents from you, a site plan, or new calculations for your stormwater best management practice. But essentially, you will be able to read what the notes are, what you're missing, and it's all through this MyGov account. Again, very simply, do I have notes? Yes or no? You go ahead and click into your notes. You could also click into what's in review. Again, it comes back to this same screen. Really, you're going to look at what the notes are. What are they asking for? What is the requested drawings? All of this just happens with a couple of clicks. And this is what the MyGov site will look like for the contractors. So next, I'd like to spend just a little bit of time talking about some available resources that the city has put out there for you, as well as what information is required for this stormwater infill development permit. Both the required information and the available resources, again, are right on the city's website, City of Brentwood, and we're going to be looking for the planning and development section. I've got the hyperlink here, so I'm going to go straight to it for you. So once you get to the City of Brentwood's homepage, again, you're going to look for the planning and development page. And here we can look at this available information. Down here on the left-hand side, we've got this stormwater control management best practices. And so this is a document that was created specifically for these stormwater infill development permits. This guidance document here talks about, again, best management practices, or BMPs. That gives very good information regarding calculations on how to calculate the stormwater volume that's required by the ordinance. And the required volume within the ordinance is that you're required to capture 1.14 inches of rainfall, the very first 1.14 inches from your net impervious. So you've got your 1.14 inches divided by 12 times the net impervious area, and that will give you a volume in cubic feet that you're required to detain on your property. And so again, this guidance document goes through some of these best management practices, some solutions that they're giving to you that you can choose to implement. There's things like dry wells and rain barrels and modified French drains, permeable pavements and bioswales, vegetated filter strips, rain gardens, amended soils, and you can have some credits for existing trees. This document also describes how to perform a soil infiltration test, because not every BMP is suitable for every situation. If your soil doesn't allow infiltration at a certain rate, a dry well probably isn't going to work for you. And so that's all in this guidance document that says, if you've not performed this soil infiltration test, we're going to assume that you have a lower infiltration rate than someone that has performed this infiltration test. So that's an important factor to make sure that your BMP is suitable for your particular location. And so again, this guidance, I'm going to go through this pretty quickly here. This guidance document has a lot of background about the city's code of ordinances, the requirements. Again, we're talking about that 1.14 inches of rainfall that needs to be captured, and then the submittal information. And I can go into this a little bit more in detail through a checklist that the city has developed with the help of Gonzalez companies, so that we're following all of those items that's listed in the city's code of ordinances. So they also provide within this guidance document recommended maintenance and inspections, and then they go into the actual BMPs themselves and the locations that these should be installed at and the suitability for each of these things. Again, dry wells, they should be at least 10 feet away from foundation, 5 feet away from property lines, and dry wells should not be located beneath paved surfaces, and that these an infiltration test should be done to make sure that that tank can drain dry within 72 hours. And so here we've got some nice information regarding if you don't have an infiltration rate, or if you do have an infiltration rate that is less than 0.25 inches per hour based on the test that's at the back of this document, this site, your site is not suitable for a dry well. Once you calculate your volume, you can either have that in cubic feet or gallons, depending on the BMP that you're selecting. And so they give you these conversion rates. So we've got, this is a really simple checklist. What is the required volume? What is the infiltration rate? Is the site suitable? These are all questions that that you should know if your consultant is designing this BMP, and that's the information that the city's going to be looking for during the review of the BMP. Other types of BMPs can be rain barrels. These are things that can capture the runoff directly from your impervious surfaces like your roofs, and you can capture those in those rain barrels. And they give you more information about how to calculate, again, the contributing area so that you know how much you're actually collecting. They have good information here about modified French drains. And again, each one of these has a nice little checklist so that you can go through and make sure that first your BMP is suitable for your site and that you've sized it correctly, and we've got all of the boxes checked. There's a lot of other BMPs out there that's not listed in this guidance document, but permeable pavements is an acceptable BMP. You can have bioswales as an acceptable BMP. And they've also given you information about vegetated filter strips. Again, this guidance document isn't meant to be an exclusive list, but they've given you some good ideas and some ideas to maybe enhance your property with a rain garden or a bioswale or something like that. So again, these BMPs don't need to take away from your property. Rather, they can add some landscaping, some details, some aesthetic value as well. As we get towards the back of this this guidance document, again, we've got each one of the BMPs has a really great checklist, and it provides you how to calculate it, trying to make this as easy as possible for everyone that's applying for this. They give you all of the steps on how to perform a soil infiltration test, and again, how to calculate that volume that you're trying to capture with your BMP. Again, this is that sizing calculation guidance section. In addition to that, they have recommended plantings for some of these bioswales and rain gardens and different things like that, things that like shade or to have wet feet and different types of suitable ground cover. So they've given you a lot of nice resources here in this guidance document. In addition to this guidance document, they've included this checklist. So this is the required information. This is the checklist that I'm going to use when I review the plans. These are all items that are specifically listed within the city's ordinance that are required to be included with this permit. So if some of these may not be applicable, but most of them are going to be applicable. And so we can just go ahead and go down the list here. First, a professional seal and signature. All plans that are delivered to the city are required to have a professional seal and signature. That designer's information needs to be listed, as well as the applicant's information and the site address. And then we get into some items that for engineers anyway, these are very standard type items. Plans date, the plan date, titles and numbering of the sheets, vicinity maps, scales. A 1 inch equals 20 feet is the minimum size allowable. You can have 1 inch equals 10 or bigger if you'd like, but 1 inch equals 20 is a nice size that makes the plans readable for us. We'd like to have a north arrow and a plan legend. And then we're looking for the general site topography, right? So where are the sidewalks? Where are the trees? Where are the adjacent utilities, et cetera? And then, so not only the existing topography, but also the proposed site features and the elevations across your property. We're also looking for finished floor elevations. We discussed existing and proposed utilities that may be happening with the development on the property. And then definitely the existing and proposed drainage BMPs. So where are the ditches? Where is the dry well that you're going to propose? Or where are you going to locate your rain barrel, et cetera? Those need to be included. Drainage patterns with flow arrows is a requirement as well. Whenever the rain hits the driveway, is it going towards the street or is it going towards our BMP? These drainage patterns need to be shown. So how much area is actually being disturbed with the improvement, and the impervious area. So how much is sidewalk, how much is grass, how much is rooftop? Those should be all tabulated and easily discernible within the submittal. The city's ordinance has a specific section regarding sump pumps and downspouts. The city's ordinance does not allow for those items to be discharged less than 10 feet from the property line. The reason for this is it gives the chance for that water to, again, infiltrate back into the ground if you let it run across some of the grass area. You don't want a downspout discharging right into your neighbor's property. Then we get into some information about the best management practices themselves, a plan and an elevation of what that selected BMP is, details and installation procedures. A lot of times the installation procedures can mirror what is being provided in the city's guidance document, because they give guidance on how each of these should be installed, and so it's really easy to reference the city's guidance documents. We should also include our stormwater calculations, explaining how we've determined the volume of water that we're going to detain with our BMP. And then we need to have appropriate erosion control measures. And those erosion control measures should be suitable for each specific location. And some of these next ones aren't necessarily always applicable. We don't look at inlet spacing too often for residential, but if we have a large commercial development that maybe is putting in a parking lot or something like that, our inlet spacing would be something that would need to be looked at. Similarly, overland flow routes are important. If our BMP is overloaded, because we're only collecting the first 1.14 inches of rainfall, if it becomes overloaded, where is the overflow? What is that overland flow route? Where is the water going? Is it flowing into your neighbor's property, or are you able to discharge it into a different type of drainage way? And again, the location of detention basins may be not applicable for all users here, but some of the larger developments would require a detention basin. And similarly, in an emergency spillway or some sort of open detention area may be applicable depending on the specific situation. So again, each one of these items is very specific and is required directly in the city's ordinance. Whenever I developed this checklist for the city, I more or less read the ordinance and just put these in a nice, easily readable location for you to be able to use so that you can get through this review process in a single review. And in that way, it's the least invasive for all parties. So with that, I've finished my presentation. Like to open it up for any questions or comments from anybody that's here or on the Zoom call. It is strictly the volume of it's the first 1.14 inches of rain. So um, typically our BMPs look for those to drain dry over 72 hours. So if you've got consecutive rainfall events, there's a good possibility that that BMP may not drain dry. And that's not going to be the homeowner or the developer's responsibility to maintain all of that. But it's just the first 1.14 inches. Mhm. So the rain barrel again would be sized based on that 1.14 inches, and once it's full, there needs to be an overflow for something like that. Sure, sure. I'd be happy to meet with you. Is there anything online there? Okay. Well, thank everybody for their time, and hopefully my presentation was informative and useful. So, right. Thank you.